Interesting things are happening in Australian politics. While Labour Party leader Anthony Albanese seemed to pull off the impossible in the 2025 federal election, bringing his party back from a significant polling deficit to win a second term, things haven't exactly been going brilliantly for him over the last few weeks. Not only has Labour been declining in the polls, to the point that the Liberal National Coalition are, on average, only a couple of points behind them, but we're also seeing the slow and steady rise of a right-wing anti-immigration party known as the One Nation Party, formerly known as Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party. But who the hell is Pauline Hanson? What is the One Nation Party, and why is it rising so significantly in the polls? Could you rank every single politician in the world? Hear our thoughts and argue with us on our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. Now, it's best to start this video by having a look at the history of the One Nation Party. To do this, we need to go back to 1996, when former fish and chip shop owner Pauline Hanson was attempting to win selection in the Oxley, Queensland, seat for the right-wing Liberal Party in the House of Representatives. While she succeeded in this, her candidacy didn't last all that long, as, during the election campaign, she advocated for the abolition of social government assistance for Aboriginal Australians, and subsequently was removed as the Liberal Party candidate, although this was done too late and her name still appeared on the ballot as a Liberal candidate. Her comments attracted a huge amount of media attention, and, aided by a Labour collapse in Queensland, she successfully won her Oxley seat. Initially, she sat as an independent, and in her maiden speech, she fleshed out her views.
I come here not as a polished politician, but as a woman who has her fair share of life's knocks. My view on issues is based on common sense, and my experience as a mother of 4 children, a sole parent, and a businesswoman running a fish and chip shop. I won the seat of Oxley largely on an issue that has resulted in me being called a racist. That issue related to my comment that Aboriginals received more benefits than non-Aboriginals. We now have a situation where a type of reverse racism is applied to mainstream Australians by those who promote political correctness and those who control the various taxpayer-funded industries that flourish in our society, serving Aboriginals, multiculturalists, and a host of other minority groups. I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians. Between 1984 and 1995, 40% of all migrants into this country were of Asian origin. They have their own culture and religion, form ghettos, and do not assimilate.
This speech seemed to split Australia into two: those that thought she was speaking on behalf of ordinary Australians, and those that thought she was a racist. A few months after the speech, in an attempt to capitalise on the wave of support she received, Hanson decided to establish a new party, called Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party. Initially, things seemed to go well, with One Nation winning 11 seats in the 1998 Queensland state election. However, this success wasn't to last. The party essentially fell into irrelevance, and in the 2004, 2007 and 2013 elections, they didn't secure a single representative in either the House of Representatives or the Senate. However, in 2014, after a decade out of the limelight, Pauline Hanson made a return and took over the leadership of the party. Although she failed in 2015 to secure a seat in the Queensland state elections, losing by a mere 114 votes, she ramped up a new campaign against Australian Muslims. In the 2016 federal election, Hanson secured herself and 3 of her colleagues a Senate seat. Almost 20 years on exactly from her maiden speech, she made her second maiden speech, this time making clear that her attention had shifted to what she saw as the problem with Islam.
Indiscriminate immigration and aggressive multiculturalism have caused crime to escalate and trust and social cohesion to decline. Too many Australians are afraid to walk alone at night in their neighbourhoods. Too many of us live in fear of terrorism. In my first speech in 1996, I said we were in danger of being swamped by Asians. This was not said out of disrespect for Asians, but was meant as a slap in the face to both the Liberal and Labor governments who opened the floodgates to immigration targeting cultures purely for the vote, as expressed by former Labor Minister Barry Jones, to such an extent that society was changing too rapidly, due to migrants coming in the front door but also the back door via New Zealand. Now we are in danger of being swamped by Muslims who bear a culture and ideology that is incompatible with our own.
Since then, she's made a number of comments designed to attract attention and controversy. In 2017, she wore full Islamic dress to Senate question time before asking for the burqa to be banned. In 2018, she brought a Senate motion stating it's okay to be white. And in 2019, Hanson claimed that domestic violence victims routinely lie to the family court. Pauline Hanson's political ideology has variously been compared to Donald Trump, Nigel Farage and Marine Le Pen, politicians who either have won or appear on the cusp of winning elections in their respective countries. In the context of the global rise of the populist right, and with people beginning to turn their back on centrist mainstream parties, it shouldn't be too surprising that Australia is also experiencing a right-wing populist surge. Nor should it be surprising that a person who has decades of experience in right-wing populism is the main beneficiary of the surge. Even in the weeks following the federal election last year, One Nation's polling began to rise, with Australians continuing to be frustrated about the ongoing cost of living crisis and the lack of attention paid to immigration issues by Albanese's Labor or Susan Lee's Liberal National Coalition. In early December, former Coalition Deputy Prime Minister and multiple-time leader of the Nationals, Barnaby Joyce, crossed the floor and joined One Nation. Joyce focused on the cost of living and immigration when explaining his decision to defect, claiming that Australia's population growth as a result of immigration had removed the capacity for Australians to buy a home, have a family and increase our population by our own means. This gave One Nation not only attention but further credibility. Then, later in the month, in response to the horrific Bondi Beach shooting, in which 15 people were murdered in an Islamic State-inspired terrorist attack at a Jewish celebration, Pauline Hanson claimed that the government had allowed the wrong people to migrate to Australia. In the days that followed, she continued to blame tensions between Islamic and Jewish groups in Australia, saying, "This is the hate we've imported as a result of unfettered mass immigration." Evidently, a decent number of Australians agreed with her. Hanson received applause when she arrived to lay flowers for the victims, and One Nation's polling continued to rise afterwards. This was in stark contrast to other Australian party leaders. Albanese had refused to announce a royal commission into the shooting, the most powerful form of independent inquiry, arguing that gun reform, new hate speech laws, new steps to tackle anti-Semitism, and a review into intelligence and law enforcement agencies were sufficient. After significant backlash, particularly from the Jewish community, Albanese U-turned, accepting that after taking time to reflect, he realised a royal commission was necessary. The fact this took him more than a month to realise, though, frustrated many Australians. Coalition leader Susan Lee was also criticised for being too political in her response to the attacks, with her criticising the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Penny Wong, of not publicly shedding a single tear over the attacks. As a result of all this, as we briefly touched on in the intro, One Nation are now averaging around 20% in the polls, still behind the main parties, but definitely on the rise. This contrasts significantly with Labour, who have fallen by more than 5 points in the polls over the last few months. In fact, some recent polling from Newspoll has demonstrated that this may be an underestimate. They've shown a significant decline of Coalition to a mere 21%, and a fairly significant increase for One Nation to 22%, putting them second in the polls. About this, Hanson explained that her ambition is to turn her party into one of government. While it's too early to say whether these ambitions are realistic, with only a single poll indicating that they've overtaken Coalition, we have seen populist right parties surge in other countries, and this could be the first signs that Australians will be the next to go in this direction. Now, you're probably looking to follow this story as it develops, but how are you supposed to keep track of which outlets online are actually trustworthy, and which are just fabricating a false narrative for you to follow? Well, that's where our sponsor this week, Ground News, comes in. That's because Ground News is a website and app that helps you make sense of the complex and ever-changing media landscape. It can get increasingly overwhelming, with thousands of articles being thrown at us every day. But Ground News puts all of those articles into one place, helping you fully understand the story from start to finish. Each article even comes with a breakdown into bias distribution, factuality, and ownership of each individual source. For instance, if we take this story about the recent Australian bushfires, we can see that there were 98 sources currently reporting on it, with most of the coverage coming from the centre. We can even dive into how each side is reporting by using their bias comparison feature, showing us that the left focuses on the human element of the bushfires, while the right focuses on the physical destruction of the bushfires. Our absolute favourite feature though is their blind spot feed. Here you can see all the stories you might not have seen on your feed. So even if you don't agree with the reporting, it's good to know what's being left out of your bubble. You're probably used to being fed the news that the algorithm has decided is best for you, and breaking out of that spiral is harder than ever. Ground News will do that for you, freeing you from algorithmic restraints and letting you think freely again. So, if you want to start questioning the narrative instead of just consuming it, you can join Ground News today, and using our link will get you 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. All you have to do is subscribe through the link in the description. Go to ground.news/TLDR or scan the QR code on screen, and you'll be supporting an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.